Welcome, Carin Mikos, The Quietest House. Carin, help us out. You're the founder of Quietest House. What is the message you want to do? I understand you're having this grief retreat. What is the message you'd like people to learn?
Well, thank you, Jody. Thank you for having all of us. We are the Quietest House. I am the founder. I am a death doula and a registered nurse. And really, I am here to create the space for love and loss to coexist. And I have actually created this retreat with these amazing people to provide workshops for people to discover for themselves a way to express their grief. And what I'd like to do is introduce those people to you. The first one I'd like to introduce is Craig Addy. He is the musician who listens to the listener. Craig plays this amazing improvised piano composition, which he gets his inspiration from a conversation that I will have with the participants where they get to express their grief. Next is Joanne Morton. Joanne Morton is an amazing artist. Magic, passion, love is really what she's all about. And she's going to create a Memories of Love mobile. And this is a tool that she's going to have everybody use to create a mobile where they will be able to express their love through art and have these reminders of the people who have passed and their love for them. Next, I'd like to just introduce you to Kristin Mangione. She is a dance alchemist. She will use some guided movement to help you to locate your grief, and then within your body, locate your grief within your body, and then actually move that grief so that it can be processed more easily, more gentler, and really just provide the space for love. Next, I'd like to introduce Peaches Udoma. She is a writer, a teacher. She will be taking the participants of the grief retreat through a writing exercise where they will explore traditional Japanese haiku poems. They're going to create their own poems, and they're actually going to relocate their love for their person in nature. So the results could be that they would be walking outside, they could see a tree, and then be reminded of their love for their person. And lastly is Noah McIntyre. He is known as the gratitude coach, and he will take the participants through an exercise where they will be able to actually process such that their grief will have space for their love, space for their just appreciation of the relationship that they had with the person who's no longer with us. And again, together, we're just going to provide an incredible opportunity for everybody to experience love and loss together. So that's us.
Well, thank you. I have a couple questions, of course. Carin, I'd like to start with you because I'm kind of curious about, you said hold the space, and what is it about grief that you really want people to get?
For me, it's been my experience as a nurse in the past 25 years and now as a death doula that we don't really explore death as a part of our living. Everybody's coming to death. Like it's happening. We can't really stop it. And if we could actually prepare for it, if we could accept it, if we could talk about it, if we could learn to express it, then we could actually live all the way up and until our death. And that's really the message that the Quietest House wants to get out, and to have people live every day, really fully, truly every day.
And I find that very interesting because death is obviously the end of life. And yet you're talking about living fully, dealing with something that's ended.
Yeah, I have experienced many people who, turn a certain age or develop a certain condition where then they just sit in that chair in their living room waiting for the day that they go. And what I'm proposing is that as a society, as a culture, we actually embrace aging, that we embrace the living that is possible every day until the day we die.
That is something that I think we all could use, because I can tell you that when my dad died, people would act like it didn't even happen. And that's something that I think is probably pretty well known with a lot of other people.
I agree wholeheartedly. And, some of my kind of an odd thing to say, but some of my best memories of the people that I've loved that have passed is, at their funeral when we got together and we shared the silly stories, that I can remember my aunts and uncles telling silly stories about their brother or sister who had passed. And, just to watch everybody laugh and to be present to the love is what kept the memory of that person for me alive.
Yeah, I just love that, the way you're keeping that memory alive with that. And thank you. I'm going to move on because I know we're a little short on time, but I'll tell you, I could just talk with you guys for so long. Craig, Addy, tell me, I know that you are quite a musician, quite accomplished composer. How the heck does playing the piano, playing a beautiful song on the piano, have to do with helping with grief?
Well, the number one thing is that, I've played the piano for people who are grieving over the years quite a few times. And some people have not been able to find the words to express what they're experiencing, or they've even not been able to experience it at all. Like it's just kind of hidden away and numbed. And music has this capacity to reach into your heart and just open that up. So I've seen people go under my piano in this dark space and come out transformed. There was this one lady who had been grieving for 10 years, and she sat in my chair and she just talked about how awful it was and nothing was ever changing. She left my house laughing and giggling, walking to the elevator. Like, it can release things for people.
Really, I can really see that, because one of the things when you said music reaches spaces that we don't have words for, how true is that? I was just thinking, wow, because there are so many times where we just can't put our finger on it. So you have found it. Now, how in this retreat are you helping people specifically?
Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to be listening to people. Karen's going to be having a conversation with them, and I just really listen. I listen for the moods and the emotions that are present underneath things. We're even going to invite them just to put a word in the chat. What's your experience of your grief and your love right now? They're going to put that in the chat, and we're going to kind of collate those and to get the overall picture of the room. We might even do a word cloud where the predominant emotions are present, and then I'm going to create music from that. So people will be recreated in the music.
Oh my gosh. By any chance, I'm just curious, does the word guilt come up a lot when you do this?
Does the word what?
Guilt come up a lot when you do this?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Interesting. That's a wonderful way to look at that. Thank you so much. Peaches Udoma, I understand that you are doing haiku, a form of Japanese poetry that blurs the object and the subject and has some things to do with nature. Please share with us how this can help us in healing.
Well, writing therapy, music therapy, art therapy, movement therapy have been around for a very long time and are very effective at helping people work through certain emotional states. With haiku, it's a very brief poetic form, which sticks very closely to a syllabic pattern on 3 lines. And it can capture a moment. it can capture a moment of realization, a moment of feeling, an epiphany about something, a revelation about something. And it allows for people to actually come to a moment when they're grieving where they can locate their person in nature, because traditional haiku has to do with nature and the seasons, actually. And what we do with that is it allows them to have the experience that their loved one is still alive around them, because nature is always there. Let's say you wrote a haiku about the loss of a loved one who reminded you of an ocean in his moods. Maybe he was a bit stormy. Maybe he was changeable. Maybe he reminded you, the brilliant blue of the ocean on a summer's day reminded you of him, or the way it tosses about and froths in a storm reminds you of him. If you can actually see your person in imagery from nature, then when you experience that nature, you can actually have them still alive with you. So that's where the idea came from, doing grieving poems, doing grieving haikus for this retreat, to help people actually experience the losses and have them back to life again. Even though we can't bring people back in body, we can bring back memories, we can bring back feelings in our hearts, images of them, sensations of being around them. And so this is our attempt to have them actually use language to experience life in someone who isn't humanly alive anymore.
Wow. And I'm also hearing that they can further experience that and help others, because one of the things little I know about haiku is that the reader sometimes becomes the writer, because the subject and object can switch around. So when they share this haiku, if I'm understanding right, other people have the chance to experience that, the one who's passed on, and they can even say what they can relate to and what their subject is in that particular haiku.
Yes, absolutely.
That is so powerful, because words do have that. Words carry that meaning, and to have that in that structural quality is just, I can understand how it would really heal somebody. I can really see that.
Well, yes, when they can translate their pain into words, they can experience the pain from a different distance. They can actually articulate the pain through these images. And that gives them the opportunity to experience it in a less intense way. They can create art out of their pain, which is what they're going to be doing with the other people on the screen too, doing the same thing, but in different genres.
I love that. So thank you very much, because that is really amazing. Kristin Mangione, I know that you are a dance alchemist. I got a question for you. After I was divorced, I could not breathe deeply. How could you help someone like me?
Well, the first thing is that being in a guided, safe space, to be encouraged and also given the permission to connect with your body, which is so intimately tied with your breath. In a case like that, it is an opening to feel what's really there. And it's interesting that you mentioned about breath, because in Chinese medicine, which is some of what I bring to the dance alchemy process, breath is intimately connected with the experience of grief in the Chinese medicine system. And by being able to connect with your body and change your breath, you actually change the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system in the body, which has a lot to do with, for example, our stress states. So deep breathing, for example, would actually have an effect on changing your state of being, how you feel mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and physically. So that would be an amazing place to start, for example, if you were feeling that experience of grief and not breathing.
Wow. So in the workshop itself, are you going to bring this as well as other components to that, or how are you also going to help people?
Well, it's that, and it could be other aspects of however grief is really residing in any person, and that can look very individual. For example, Craig mentioned about sometimes we don't have an access to even feeling or being aware. The grief could be living on a semi or an unconscious level. One of the possible ways is we just shut down. So by connecting with your body, it's an opportunity to be guided internally into what you're really feeling. And particularly with this process, I use the term dance, but that's a very loose term. It's more about mindful movement. I encourage people to work with their eyes closed if they're comfortable with that. You're in your own personal space, so it's not about looking a certain way or certain steps. It's about being guided in an empowering way to feel what's really there by first listening to your body and then moving your body. And when you do that, you actually move the stuckness, you also move the energy of what's there around the grief. And as the movement happens, the state of being and how one feels will actually change. So it's an access to healing. And in my experience, people have been really surprised sometimes about what's there that they don't realize is under the surface, and how impactful it can be to do a really simple movement and feel like everything changes.
So do you have to have a dance background or be pretty good at moving your body?
No, I always say that if you have a body, you can do dance alchemy. I consider it's more a returning to that innate sense of freedom in your body, the way that we all had as children. You have permission to just simply be and move as yourself. And that's part of its power.
Wow. And it sounds like you're allowing them to literally allow that your body to help you release and to become whatever you need to become.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. I sometimes I encourage and I ground people with an image or a metaphor or something specific to focus on, but then inside of that, it's really your own. I say it's your body's innate wisdom and your own innate knowing, your intuition and your spirit that really guides you, and that's where the healing really happens.
And I love the fact that you do it with your eyes closed, because the ego gets out of the way of, oh my God, look at me, or I don't look this, or I'm not doing this right. And there's not right or wrong is what I'm hearing from you. What I'm hearing is the big message about how you can heal your body.
Exactly. And I think that's also so key, that because you don't have to look or be a certain way, you intuitively give yourself permission to not only feel, but express in any way, and sometimes that expression is what we shut down because we feel like it's not acceptable. And in this case, it absolutely is.
And I think it ties into what Carin even was saying about that stigma about death. And I'm hearing that you're helping. That's one more way of moving that stigma, that energy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Super. Noah McIntyre, gratitude. Now, got to tell you, I was not particularly grateful for a couple of things that happened when I've been going through some grief. Why gratitude in this retreat?
I'm glad you brought up what you're not grateful for, Jody. One of the pieces of my research in studying over 600 people going through gratitude workshops and retreats and groups is that one of the most healing things we can do is to acknowledge and make space for and name, as some people would say, what we're not grateful for. And then in looking at what we're not grateful for, so you can imagine something that you were not grateful for about the experience that you're referring to. And then you can say, well, is there anything in that situation that I could be grateful for that would allow me to keep moving and going forward? Because one of the most important things that gratitude helps build up inside of us emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically, because this will help with moving, right, your body, is the sense of resilience. There's been a lot of research on gratitude and resilience, gratitude and endurance, the ability to stay mentally strong in the face of great challenge and trials. When you look at what you're not grateful for, it does open up an opportunity. And if you haven't experienced that opportunity to look at what you're not grateful for and how it can open up your gratitude, both for yourself and the people that you love, in this workshop, you will have access to that. In this retreat, you will have a reliable experience of being able to discover the gratitude inside of grief and the gratitude inside of what you're not grateful for. It's a very important piece of what we're offering.
What if you say, okay, I'm going to show gratitude for this thing that happened in my life, but you really don't mean it?
There's a lot in life to not be grateful for. War, poverty, loss, betrayal, all sorts of experiences that we have in life that I would never in a million years recommend that anybody pretend to be grateful for. I think what happens in our culture, we get lost in the pop psychology notion of you should be able to find a way to be grateful for anything. But if you look at the greatest gratitude experts and teachers in the world, like Brother David Steindl-Rast, he found his gratitude in being a warrior on the fields of Europe, in World War II. And he said, the reason I discovered gratitude was because I was so glad to be alive because most of my friends around me were dying. And you can discover gratitude if you look at Desmond Tutu's life and dealing with the apartheid in South Africa, the Dalai Lama escaping. These are some of the most grateful people on earth. And they discovered it in the midst of the greatest tragedies and loss. And so when you look at the literature, when you look at these people's lives, the opportunity to be grateful because you see the contrast in what you've lost and what you could gain as a result of still being alive, still able to do and be the things that we have the ability to do and be in our lives.
Sort of like Viktor Frankl, when he was in the concentration camps, he could pick out the people that were going to die. And he had that gratitude, knowing that he had in him that will to live.
Yeah, the will to live, and that he also has the opportunity to carry on what they may have done or been able to do in their life. He can live for and with them and carry on their legacy, which I know is a very important topic in your work, how to carry on the legacy of what you may have lost in someone. But, you asked, like with my father who passed away 5 years ago, I asked, what would my father do? And that gives me a sense of connecting with him and how he can live on through me.
And that gratitude for them. And I think that it sounds to me that it's kind of a process rather than to just suddenly flip on to gratitude is what I'm hearing from you.
Oh, yeah. We have real tools based in both spiritual practice, social science research, and neuroscience that we're going to be using in the retreat. Yeah.
Oh, God. Sounds amazing. Thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. I mean, time is kind of making me go on. Joanne Morton, you are a positive energy artist, and I understand that you are going to do mobiles. Why would hanging a mobile help me with grief?
Oh, what a good question. So I think what it is, it's not just making a hanging mobile, it's making what the mobile represents. So when I first met Carin and I had a conversation with her about death and dying, I wanted to really pose this question of creating a hanging mobile to help people when they're in the process of grieving. And I was really pleased that she was open to hearing about the ideas of positive energy into the grieving process, because what's positive about dying? It's very sad. However, and I think something that you had mentioned earlier too about kind of ignoring, when your dad died, no one really talked about it. And I think that's a way where grief can come over. We don't really want to remember the people that have passed because it brings up sad moments and we don't want to feel the sadness, And so creating a memories of love hanging mobile, what we're going to do is we're also going to use gratitude because I'm a firm believer in gratitude. That's why I love Noah. We're gratitude buddies. But I'm also bringing in laughter and not the, funny jokes, but we've talked already, like when we have after the funeral, we get together and we tell the stories, the fun, loving stories. And bringing gratitude and laughter together opens your heart. And when you open your heart, you open to love. And when you can find and remember the love that you experienced with the person or even the person that's lost, you're able to then embrace their love every day in your life. And having that love in your life every day kind of lessens the burden and the sadness that they're not physically there. But making a physical hanging mobile, not going to replace them, but it's just going to give you a visual. And I also want to say a lot of times, I think sometimes people who pass, you don't have resolution with. You might have some, my mother passed away and I love my mother, but mother-daughter relationships are interesting. And so when I recently made one for my mom, it gave me an opportunity to actually release some of that guilt, some of those old feelings that might have happened in that relationship into the art. And art is thousands and thousands of years. Art is what is going to save the world. Art is what is long lasting. Art is who we are when we connect to our soul. And so I invite people to be open to be an artist for an afternoon so they can connect to their soul, so they can remember the loved ones that are still in their hearts, will always be in their lives.
What I'm hearing from you is that the humor will open them up to possibility. And you got to be a little relaxed. At least this is my brain, to have some humor, which means,
Definitely.
For me, it means trust. So what I'm also hearing is you're opening up for trusting the universe and to open them up to further possibilities.
Yes. And I also think what's really wonderful about this idea of a grief retreat is we're also creating a space of trust in this for everybody who attends it, because it's a safe space that everybody who's signing up to come here is experiencing grief. We're experiencing it in one way or another, but knowing that you're not alone and that you're in a space where we can share, share whatever we want to share. That unifying connection really also reminds us that our grief is unique, but it's universal, and it's embraced and shared by all of us.
That is so what we need nowadays. Now, I just have one quick question. Carin, do you have to have one that's dying in order to get to the grief? I mean, grief, I think, okay, somebody just died. Is that what this is all about?
I think a lot of people have that thought as well, but in this time, we as a world have really experienced many different kinds of losses. The pandemic has created loss of community, loss of job, loss of just a loss of connection to people. And this is not just a retreat for the grief that is experienced for the loss of a loved one. This is about, like you mentioned earlier, divorce. It could be the loss of like a physical state that, you used to have, but now you don't for whatever reason. Like there's just so much loss, and it's all primarily unprocessed. So it comes out in ways that maybe are not necessarily the best or the intended, or, it can get a little muddled on its way out, without the ability to process, without the ability to express it in a way that is safe and complete, like really complete. And through this retreat, folks will have the opportunity to try out 4 or 5 different ways, and they can discover for themselves. Maybe I want to do more gratitude work. Maybe I want to really explore this writing about my loss, or maybe there's some music or movement or art that is really going to help me to express what my heart feels. So that's really what this group of amazing human beings are out to create. What the Quietest House is, going to really focus on is grief of all kinds, not just the loss of a loved one, and creating that community, like Joanne said, that, we're all in this together. And although we all can experience a different kind of grief, we can all express it differently. It's there for everyone.
Yes, and what I really love is I know that Craig had mentioned about music. It's a spaces where we don't have words. And when I'm hearing this, everybody here is opening up spaces, be it getting into your body, your words, your art, your gratitude, and opening up those spaces so that, as you said, we can choose what form speaks to us the most, maybe all of them together in my mind. And then that way we can open ourselves up for a life, a more profound life after whatever loss we have.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for hearing that.
Thank you all for being here. I so appreciate all of you. It's been a really uplifting time. Thank you.